County Donegal Railway had 5 main classes of steam locomotives during its narrow gauge lifetime, from the 1860s, 70s through to the end of the 1950s, and all of these are available from me on trains, and these are the different classes that you can download from my website as it's listed on this video, www.baronagarrick.net/ing for trains. And first of all, this is the Class 1 locomotive, the very earliest ones, which were built actually for the West Donegal Railway, which ran from Stranraer, which is this station, although it's far from finished. As you can see, I've got an odd building stuck over here, the footbridge is missing, and there's all sorts of things in the wrong position, like this signal cabin here. But nevertheless, I thought I'd show you these locomotives, because I modelled these, or rather Ricky Sykes and I modelled these, must be 10 years ago now, 9-10 years ago, and they're still pretty good. And certainly for 3-foot narrow gauge, they're nice. They're certainly nice little locomotives. So this is the Class 1 Alice, and Class 1's she had 2 sisters, Blanche and Lydia, and these were named after female relations of the directors. So if we just go into, so we go up here to free roaming to make it a bit easier to nip around. And these were built by Sharp Stewart in 1881, and they operated until, well, Alice was the last one to go in 1926 when she was scrapped, but they operated until just before the First World War. And as you can see, they're 240T locomotives, or they're all tank locomotives, as you can see here on the Donegal, and they were added to as the railway began to expand in 1893 by the Class 2 locomotives, which are these ones here. This is one of them, Columbkille, and there were 6 Class 2 locomotives, and of the 460 tank, 460T tank configuration, and these were substantially better for the service through the Barnesmore Gap and elsewhere. But they still were relatively underpowered for some of the longer and more heavier trains, because by this stage the County Donegal had about 125 route miles of 3-foot narrow gauge railway running through County Donegal. So Columbkille was part of these 6, and they were all named after local places, rivers and so on. So Meenglass, Drumboe, Inver, Finn, Foyle and Columbkille, and some of these names were subsequently used by later classes of locomotive. So that was the Class 2s. The Class 3s, here we are. This one is, I think it is, just trying to read it there. Let's get it in a bit closer. This is Hercules, and its sister locomotive was called Sir James. And these Class 3 locomotives, as you can see in the Baltic configuration, are 444T, and these were built just into the Edwardian period by Nielsen Reed. Nielsen's have built the Class 2s, but now the company has been expanded and it was now Nielsen Reed. And again, 3-foot gauge, of course, and these were able to handle quite a lot of the services that operated throughout the Donegal. And as I say, called Sir James and Hercules after directors of the company. And I've released these in 2 different colour schemes, because we've got these in the original green, this is in the black, or sort of almost black, and this is the old livery of the County Donegal Railway. Well, at the same time, before the outbreak of First World War, in fact in 1904, to add to the Class 3s and indeed to begin to replace the Class 1 and 2s, the Class 4 locos were introduced. So this one is, I can see the smoke and lead adjustment on that one. So this is Class 4 locomotive, 464T, and along with its sister locomotives, Oenea and Meenglass. These were all built again, or these were built on Naismith Wilson, and they lasted almost, some of them lasted almost to the end of the railway in the 1950s. But perhaps the most significant development and addition to the fleet for the CDR was in 1907, when the Class 5 locomotives, of which this is an example, again called Columbkille, were introduced, again built by Naismith Wilson. These locomotives get renumbered and the numbers moved around quite a bit. So it does take a bit of sorting out, but there's plenty of material been written on these locomotives. For example, the Class 5s were called Donegal, Blanche, Killybegs, Letterkenny and Raphoe, but they were all renamed to Meenglass, Drumboe, Columbkille, Finn and Foyle. So you can see there that they were swapping the names around quite a bit, and some of these lasted right until the end of the railway in the 1950s. In fact, Columbkille and Meenglass are still in the museum in Derry, and Drumboe is with the County Donegal Railway Restoration Society, and is currently still in bits at Whitehead, where they've been doing the RPSI. I've done some amazing restoration work on her, and but for $100 for a boiler, I think we're just about ready to get her back into steam, but certainly all her motion has been restored. And the final development of these was an extension of this Class 5 into the Class 5A. You can see a much more substantial, bigger locomotive again, and these were introduced in 1912. So the Class 5s came in between 1907 and 1908, and then 1912, just before the First World War, a couple of years before the First World War, we had the 5As, two 640s like the 5s, but with greater water and coal capacity, and they could handle anything basically, although even they sometimes had to go double-headed on the special excursion trains that ran in the 1950s through the Barnstable Gap. But the Class 5As, they were originally named Ballyshannon, Strabane and Stranora, after places on the railway, but then with the Class 1s having been scrapped, they then became Alice, Blanche and Lydia. And of course Blanche is in the Railway Museum at Cultra, the railway gallery, so you can visit her and see her still in all her glory. So those are the 5 or 5.5 main categories of the Donegal Railway's steam locomotives, and as I say, this is the sketchy outlines of what will eventually be my model of Stranora. You can see here I've just dumped a couple of the buildings which I've done. These actually have to be moved over into this area, and this signal box has to be moved. It's completely in the wrong place. But otherwise the general layout of the route is pretty much there, and you can see the distinctive church which is still standing, of course, but all this is now gone. This has all been swept away, including the very distinctive headquarters building. Here, this is the Stranora headquarters building with its logo of the Finn Valley Railway, which is the first part of the County Donegal Railway to be built there. And this is pretty accurate. The clock has survived and is actually the Millennium Clock, which now is in a sort of a skeletal arrangement here. And over here should be the town of Ballybofey, so that's all got to come. But you can see there these 3-foot gauge locomotives, which, as I say, I don't think I've edited them in at least 5-6 years. So this class is 4 and 5 needs a little bit of update for that smoke, and but nevertheless I think they're a good representation of the County Donegal Railway's steam locomotives. These would operate all the routes, and in fact it was only the steam locomotives that were allowed to operate through from Strabane to Derry. Strabane to Stranora was the original Donegal Railway, or the Finn Valley Railway as it was originally known, because it came in from this direction from Strabane, and as you can see I haven't taken the layout very far from there, but from Strabane you came into Stranora, and then at Stranora there was a junction, and here we had a line peeling off eventually over the river and off into unmade. The landscape is correct, but all the line just stops here, and that's going to go up the line to Glentees. That's the Glentees line. I shall eventually model it all, and I've seriously neglected this model. I really must get back to do some more about it. But this is the main line that ran round. I'll just take you along through it so to give you an idea. Did a big sort of double reverse or reverse loops here over the river again, and then gradually climbing all the way through the little townland of Meenglass amongst other places, and there was a little halt there. I'm not sure if we're going to get that far with me zooming along like this, but that's Meenglass halt there, or the position of it. I've still got to get the road back in. It's rather suffer. This model is rather layout was rather suffer from being transferred from various versions forward, from various versions of trains, and it's climbing all the way up through the hills of South Donegal here until we get on and on and on and on. Trains is wonderful because you can do all this to scale, and somewhere along here is Dergbridge Halt, which is lock by the side of it here, and there's a bridge missing there, got to be replaced. So you can see it really has suffered from being there's Dergbridge Halt, just a little platform, and again there's a kink in the track that needs tidying up. But I just thought I'd take you forward on this because you can see now, you see the mountains beginning to rise. The road, if you travel on the road through the Barnsmore Gap, you would recognise this view, although the road is off to the right, and then it climbs and climbs. The railway climbs and climbs and climbs until they cut a ledge in the side. You can see it very, very clearly here. Cut a ledge in the side, and in fact I've walked the whole of this route, and the road is over here somewhere, although it's missing at the moment. It's got to go back in, and the river, they are winding away, and it twists and turns round this mountain pass through the Barnsmore, the big gap. There's a side river coming in there, and eventually we come. This is Lochesk State. Sorry, that's not Lochesk. That's Barnsmore Halt. It will be, and we must have passed the site of Bideo Barnes somewhere back there. And as we're coming in here, goodness me, that's a very strange tree. I think that has to go. And on the way down, we're dropping down again now, having gone through the gap, and we come in, and this is Lochesk Station. There's another one of those very curious red trees, and so all the signalling has to go in, and from here we carry on down, dropping down all the way through the Barnsmore Gap, and there's a couple of other odd coloured trees, and then there's a series of halts. As you see, there's one meant to be there, and oh dear, the track has even got buried in the landscape by some of the changes over the time. So some time since I looked at this, but here you can see the hills of southwest Donegal in front of us, and we're zooming along further and further, and we come to Donegal Town Station, which is where the County Donegal Railway today has its headquarters, County Donegal Railway Restoration Society. And you can see I've still got to return the turntable here. There's a diesel fueling point, there's a loco shed, there's goods sheds and that here, and actually the town extends across here. This is actually the line of Tyrconnell Street. This should all be built up housing, and then down here we should have a level crossing and a road, and then it swings right the way round the town, and I've not carried on any further with it yet, but that eventually goes right the way through to Killybegs. And if we go back to Donegal Town, you'll see, where are we? Yes, coming in, when we came in from the Barnsmore Gap, which is down this line, there was a trailing connection coming in from here, and that was the branch line that went right the way down to Ballyshannon. So this had a main line from Strabane really to Donegal Town. That's as far as I've got with it. From Strabane to Donegal Town, and then it had branches to Killybegs. Ballyshannon, and from Strabane to Derry, and also from Strabane to Letterkenny, and from Stranora itself, that one over that big girder bridge, to Glenties. So this is really quite an extensive route, and one day, well, maybe one day, I like to have these things going for as long as I possibly can, just fiddling a bit about with them. And then I got diverted doing rolling stock for other types of railways, Great Western and so on. But the Donegal Railway is a beautiful run, and I would recommend my very old video that Ricky and I did years ago of the run through the Buswell Gap. And you can see the extraordinary extent of the gap. I'm not quite sure what these lines are. I think they're meant to be fences. I'll have to do something. There's some texturing that needs redoing, but you get the idea. I mean, it's really quite precipitous in parts. It's a wonderful view if you get to walk along there. And so here we are, flying along back eastwards past the Loch Plus Dergbridge Halt, on and on and on and on. And so with trains, unlike so many other, sort of tabletop model railways, or layouts that you just build on a so-called real models. I suppose they are real models, but this is, to me, is more real because it's to scale, and you can really get an idea of how enormous these networks were. And this was just quite a small, although it was the largest narrow gauge railway in Ireland, 125 miles is pretty impressive. But compared to some of the big companies, of course, across the UK, not all that big. But this was the headquarters building with extensions and so on. So eventually this will all get sorted out as Stranora. So I hope that's been of interest to you. I'm introducing the locomotives because somebody did comment about, how you model the locomotives, and as you can see by this one with the steam going in different directions, the smoke going in different directions, these two need a little bit of tweaking. But yes, indeed. These locos are available to download from my website. So I hope you enjoyed that quick look at the sort of someday, one day when, and do have a look at the locomotives. And hope you've enjoyed the video. And if you have any queries, please let me know, and I'll aim to answer them. And please subscribe, because it encourages me to produce more of these, showing just what can be produced in Trains Railway Simulator.